Hi everyone, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about the effects of Title 42 ending and the effect of the new law passed by Florida governor called the SB 1718. All right, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, what is Title 42? Is basically the law that during COVID, right, started March 2020. Because of COVID, people entering the US without authorization were not allowed to actually physically enter the US without being processed. They had to remain in Mexico. But as of yesterday, May 11th, this law no longer applies. However, it has been replaced with the new rule, asylum rule, circumvention of lawful pathways. But us in the immigration world call it the asylum transit ban. Okay, there's not much difference between the Title 42 effect and the asylum transit bans effect. So we're going to be getting all into it, who this affects, when it applies, and how you can protect yourself, and what exceptions apply. All right. As far as the new bill passed in Florida, we will be getting into what exactly is this new bill? What does it? Who does it affect? What does it actually do? And of course, as always, how you can protect yourself um, in the midst of all of that. So, before we get into it, let me just introduce myself. I am Attorney Lilian Chukura. I am a US based immigration lawyer, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the US immigration law system. Here on my page, we talk all about getting status in the US, whether that's through green card, through family, asylum, all the other ways that you can get status in the US, and of course, getting citizenship. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to learn more, please feel free to join my community of informed immigrants by subscribing to my page. If you would like to schedule a private consultation with me where we can talk about your specific immigration issues or questions, feel free to do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, or by calling my office at 508 443 1788. All right, let's get into it. So, Title 42 ended yesterday, May 11th. So, this is breaking news, right? It ended yesterday, May 11th. We knew this was coming once the Biden administration ended the COVID emergency. So, the COVID emergency, state of emergency ended May 11th. So, therefore, any laws or rules associated with it also ended. So Title 42 was part of that. It ended yesterday, but it is being replaced by something far less, far more problematic. Okay. So typically, if someone wants to come to the US, and they are coming in without authorization to seek asylum. So the asylum laws are very, any country can actually give someone asylum. Whether you want to seek asylum in a specific country would depend on if the class you're coming to you're seeking protection for is actually protected in that country. So, for example, if you are seeking protection because you are LGBTQ plus, there are certain countries that do not protect people that are LGBTQ plus, right? So you would not go and seek asylum in that country. US is one of the places where people come to seek asylum because of the way the US is portrayed to the world. This is a beacon of, you know, independence, liberation. You can be yourself here. This this is going to cause a lot of issues for people. So as of April 10th, they basically made it so that when you're trying to come into the US, you're supposed to get a credible fear interview. So a credible fear interview is where a border patrol officer meets with you. And again, you are in custody. This is not just you are somewhere in the, no, you come through the border, present yourself to a border patrol officer, they take you into custody, and they will do a credible fear interview. The credible fear interview is basically to decide if there is enough there, right, in your story, that the officer believes that you have a credible fear of going back to your home country. And if the officer determines that there is a credible fear, then they will either have you remain in detention, or they will so basically, if they have you remain in detention, you can still go in front of a judge and seek asylum, or they may let you come into the US. Again, you will still be in immigration court and seek asylum through the court. Now, as of April 10th, they fast tracked these credible fear interviews. Basically, you come in, you having your interview, right? As of May 11th, these interviews are going to be held by phone within hours of you coming into the US. So imagine you, you know, you are seeking asylum, you just cross the border, you get detained, and you are within hours of that on the phone with a CBP officer, Customs and Border Patrol, CBP. And they are asking you questions. They are asking you questions about your credible fear. And of course, if they find credible fear, there's a whole, then you seek asylum. Even the asylum application is also going to be fast tracked in these situations. So basically, if you're in that situation, you come in, you're getting a phone call, you're doing before the officer is in front of you, and you're having a conversation, you're able to express yourself. On the phone, it's really hard for the officer to see you, to understand your physical reactions to some of the things you're saying, right? Some of us, me included, I talk a lot with my hands. When I am in a certain emotional state, or I'm talking about something that affects me emotionally, my body, your body language is going to change. The officer cannot see any of that through the phone. So it's basically listening and making a decision right then and there. And then Mexico has announced that they will begin to accept Title VIII removals. So if you're removed from the US, you can go straight to Mexico, which, again, is just a way to limit people's ability to seek asylum in the US by saying, oh, well, you can just go to Mexico. So, go. I hate talking about this. But you need to have this information. So let's keep going. So basically, under this new rule, the circumvention of lawful pathways, basically what it's going to do is, if a person from another country, right, if you go through any other country to get to the US, so typically someone may travel, well, if you're coming through the southern border, you're coming through Mexico, right? Let's just be honest about that. You're coming through Mexico, which means you are automatically traveling through another country, right? And if you're traveling through another country, you are now banned from applying for asylum, right? You are now banned from applying for asylum unless you applied for asylum in that other country and you were denied, right? So as you are traveling through these countries, just trying to survive and get to the US and apply for asylum, you are also supposed to apply for asylum in those countries that you're traveling through. And the only way you can then apply for asylum in the US is if those countries that you traveled through and applied for asylum in denied your asylum. If they denied your asylum, then you can come and apply in the US. Now, again, as I said before, if you are seeking asylum based on a protected class that is not protected in that country, does it make sense to go and apply for asylum in that country? But that's what people have to go through. So this is going to be in effect from May 11, 2023 to May 11, 2025. So basically on May 11, 2025, they will either extend it, change it, remix it, right? But from May 11, 2023 to May 11, 2025, if someone is traveling through other countries to get to the US and seek asylum, they are supposed to file for asylum in those countries and be denied before they will be able to apply in the US. If you did not apply in any other country that you traveled through, you would be banned from applying in the US. Now, there's a rebuttable presumption that these people are not eligible to apply for asylum unless, right? So if you traveled through other countries, you didn't apply for asylum in those countries, and you come to the US to seek asylum, there's a presumption, right? There's a presumption that you do not qualify for asylum in the US, that you cannot get asylum in the US unless you meet one of these three things. Again, how is someone going through traveling to the US in fear for their lives supposed to know all these things? But that's what I'm here for, right? To give you the information. So if you did not apply for asylum in any other country, there's these three things that may lead to you still being able to apply for asylum in the US. So one is you faced an acute medical emergency, right, at the time of the unauthorized entry. So basically, the reason that you are allowed to get, when you came into the US, you had a medical emergency, you couldn't apply for asylum in those countries, right? Then you can still apply for asylum in the US, right? You face an extreme or imminent threat to your life or safety at the time of the unauthorized entry. So basically, if you're going through these countries and you were in fear for your life and safety, and there was an immediate threat to your life. So the examples they give is rape, kidnapping, torture, or murder. If you are in that situation, then yes, you can still apply for asylum in the US, even if you did not apply for asylum in any other country you traveled through. And you have to demonstrate this. Remember, there's a presumption. The US government is saying if you travel through these countries and you did not apply for asylum and get denied, you cannot apply for asylum in the US, right? Unless you can prove one of these three things. You don't have to prove all of them, just one of them, right? The third thing is you were a victim of severe form of trafficking at the time of your unauthorized entry. So you were trafficked into the US, and it was a severe form of trafficking, not just, someone helped you cross the border, right? So there's that, and then there's severe form of trafficking. So those are the three ways that you can still apply for asylum and report the presumption that you don't qualify. And there's an exceptions, of course. So this does not apply to people, right, that made an appointment through the CBP One app. All right. So asylum seekers who use the pre-scheduled system through the Customs and Border Patrol One app, so CBP One app, will not have this ban, right? This will not apply to you if you actually went on the CBP One app and made an appointment, you pre-scheduled that you are going to come and apply for asylum, then you will not you will not have a transit ban. So this ban will not apply to you. All right. So no credible fear interview or ICE detention is expected if you use the CBP One app for this purpose. The next exception is basically this ban does not apply to you if the individual waited at the point of entry. So if you're crossing from Mexico to the US, you waited at the point of entry to seek asylum, and you established that you could not access the app due to a language barrier, your illiteracy, significant technical failure, or other ongoing serious obstacle. All right. So, exception one, you use the CBP One app and you make an appointment. Exception two is, oh, you were not able to make an appointment because you had a language barrier, you were illiterate, you had significant technical failure, or you had other ongoing and serious obstacle. That ongoing and serious obstacle is up to the officer to determine if it's what is serious and ongoing. Okay. And then finally, if you are an unaccompanied minor, so this does not apply to unaccompanied minor. So an unaccompanied minor that comes to the US, presents themselves at the border without an adult, will not have this transit ban put on them. Okay? So if you or someone you know are going to be transiting into the US to seek asylum, the CBP One app is the way to go to avoid this transit ban. Okay. The CBP app changes apply to appointments that are assigned May 24, 2023 and onward. So basically, starting May 24, 2023, appointments that are scheduled then will not have this ban on it. There are 1,000 spots a day, which will be filled at random. So you go on the app, you put in your information, you request an appointment, right? There's only 1,000 spots left. So it's first come, first serve. If 100,000 people, so let's put this in perspective. If 100,000 people put in a request through this app, and there's only 1,000 spots available a day, just know how long, right? How long is it going to actually take for you to get an appointment? All right. So walk-ups and people not using the app and seeking asylum without prior appointment will have to wait and can be turned back. Okay. That's just what it is. If you show up without an appointment, they do not have to serve you, right? They can choose to turn you back. Again, this really only applies to people that actually present themselves in front of an officer. So if you cross the border undetected into the US, just know, and you want to apply for asylum, just know this ban applies to you. Okay? So that is the latest on this end of Title 42. Okay, it is replaced by something else, right? It's replaced by something else, but it's that's what we have to work with, right? If you're coming in, get on the CBP One app, start putting your information to get an appointment, or be able to show that you're not able to use the app because of language barrier, illiteracy, significant technical failures, or ongoing serious obstacles, which will be determined by the officer. So that's it for that part. So let's get into so basically, getting on the app is based on the way they have structured it, is the best way to go through coming to the US to seek asylum without having this ban on you. Okay, if you do not go through the app, if you do not present yourself to a CBP officer and you enter the US, just know this ban is automatically on you if you apply for asylum, unless you're able to meet the exceptions, you know, of having an acute medical emergency, having an extreme and imminent threat to your life or safety. Those include rape, kidnapping, torture, or murder, or that you were a victim of a severe form of trafficking. All right. So now let's get into the other topic for today, which is the Florida SB 1718. So basically, this is how it's marketed. The strongest anti-illegal immigration bill in the nation to combat the Biden border crisis. That's how they're marketing it out in Florida. This is a very anti-immigrant bill, okay? If you are in Florida and you do not have status, okay, or you plan to travel to Florida and you do not have status, please listen up, please, okay? So basically, there are, several things for employers having to use E-Verify and being fined $1,000 a day if they fail to use for every single day they fail to E-Verify an employee. Okay, so that's one thing. They will suspend an employer's license if they knowingly employ someone that is undocumented. It makes use of using a fake ID to gain employment a felony. So this is major. So basically, it's saying that if an employer knows that you do not have status in the US and employs you, their license is being suspended, right? Their license to operate in Florida will be suspended. And then if you, the undocumented immigrant, use a fake ID to get an employment, now they're treating it as a felony. Okay, felonies have felonies have prison sentences. All right. They enhance the penalties for human smuggling, including, right? So including knowingly transporting 5 people into the US, right? So human smuggling is basically when you bring people across borders and they are concealed, right? They are hidden. Now, this is saying that if you transport 5 people or 5 or more people, then you can get second-degree felony charge. And if you're convicted, you are subject to $10,000 fine and up to 15 years in prison. Okay, so human trafficking, you brought in 5 or more people, so human trafficking and human smuggling are 2 different things, right? Human trafficking is a crime already. Human smuggling is a little different, right? So you may help a family member conceal themselves to enter the US. That is smuggling. And this is saying that if you do that for 5 or more undocumented people, you can get up to $10,000 fine and up to 15 years in prison. Now, on the other side, if you help one minor one time enter the US without authorization, you will get the same fine and the same prison sentence as someone that smuggled five or more people. So why should this matter to you? So if you are a parent, right? If a parent comes into the US with their minor child, that is technically considered human smuggling. So a parent that comes into the US without any authorization with their minor child can be charged with a second-degree felony in Florida, be subject to $10,000 fine, and up to 15 years in prison. So putting that in perspective. And they're going to expand their busing undocumented immigrants to sanctuary cities. And then it bans local governments and NGOs from issuing identification documents to undocumented people. And if you are undocumented and you have an out-of-state driver's license issued only to people that are undocumented. So there are states that will issue driver's licenses to individuals that are undocumented. If you have your license based on that program in your state and you go to Florida, just know that license does not work in Florida. Okay? So even if you have the license and you drive through Florida before, just know that is considered unlicensed, you're driving without a license, and that is a crime already. But now Florida is saying even if you have a driver's license from another state and you are undocumented, that driver's license does not work in Florida. So just know, if you're in Florida, no fake IDs, because that's a felony, right? Your license from another state based on the fact that you're undocumented does not work. Okay? So, and driving without a license is a crime. So that is just layers and layers of things that you need to be cautious of. All right. So as you're going, if you're in Florida or if you plan to travel to Florida, just be aware of these things, right? Be aware of the fact that if you have a license, it's not going to work there. So please do not drive if your license is from a state that allows undocumented people to have a license. Also, if you have a fake ID, just know that is a felony now in Florida. So it is things that you need to keep in mind. Employers are also on alert because, especially in the construction industry and in the tourist industry, let's be honest, like hospitality, hotels, resorts, all those things, there are undocumented people that work in those companies, and they most likely would either be fired or choose to no longer work because the employer is now going to be charged $1,000 a day that they have one employee that's not e-verified. So there's a lot here that's going to make life in Florida extremely hard for people that are undocumented. And that is the goal, right? Let's be clear on that. The goal of this bill, the goal of this law in Florida is to make Florida unattractive to individuals that are undocumented. Is to make Florida a place that individuals that are undocumented will not feel safe, will not be able to work, will not be able to drive. Will not even, in some cases, they may not be able to go to the hospital because now hospitals are required to collect and report the healthcare costs for illegal, for undocumented individuals, right? Hospitals have to collect this information and report it to the state of Florida if they treat an undocumented person, which will most likely then lead to some of these hospitals that are state funded to lose their funding. And then if they lose their funding, then they can't help people, right? And also, it may make these hospitals not want to treat undocumented individuals because they may lose their funding. So the goal of this bill is to basically make your life difficult, to make it impossible for you to live in Florida. And one thing I've told people is Florida is a border state. Border states that border another country, have a vast power to stop and question people about their immigration status. Okay? So do not, if you're stopped by the police and you're asked, let's go into what to do if you are stopped by the police in public, right? What you can and can't do, all of that, because again, the purpose of this is not to just scare you, but to give you things that you can use to protect yourself, right? So remember the number one thing, the number one thing, the number one thing. You have the right to remain silent. Okay? You do not have to answer any questions. You don't have to answer the question of where you're going, where you're traveling from, what are you doing, where do you live. You do not have to answer those questions. You can say out loud, I wish to remain silent, right? In some states, you may be required to provide your name if asked. However, just know only in those states, right? Your name, and that's it, right? If you're in a state that requires you to identify yourself to the police, all you need to do is say, my name is Lilian Chukura, right? You say your name, and then you say, I am invoking my right to remain silent. You do not answer any other questions. Okay, you do not have to consent to them searching you or your belongings. They may pat you down if they suspect you have a weapon, but just know that you refusing for them to search you does not mean that they're not going to search you, but it does preserve your rights for court, right? It does preserve your rights for legal action. All right. If you are arrested, you do have a right to a government appointed lawyer. This is if you are documented or undocumented. I want to make that very clear. The right to counsel does not say only if you are a U.S. citizen. No. The right to counsel is if the U.S. government, through its police force, arrests you and put you in jail, right? If you are arrested, you get a right to counsel if you cannot afford one. All right. If you just know also, when it comes to immigration status, you do not have to answer any questions about where you were born, whether you are a U.S. citizen or not, or how you entered the country. Okay. However, if you are close to the U.S. To the border, which again, Florida is one of those states. Florida, Texas is one of those some of those states that do, because they're close to a border, that is going to then make it harder for you to not answer those questions, right? Because there's laws in place. But just invoke your right to remain silent. All right. If you are arrested, right? So everything I was talking about is like the police is trying to get information out of you. If they do decide to arrest you or detain you, right? Arrest and detention are two different things. Because an officer can have you there asking you questions, but they're not detaining you and they're not arresting you. So sometimes it may help to be like, am I being detained? And if they say, no, you're not being detained, then you have a right to remove yourself from that situation. Okay. They may say that you are being detained. In that situation, once they tell you that you're being detained, you have a right to counsel. You have a right to ask for a lawyer, right? You always have a right to remain silent, always. So keep a record of what's going on. Pay attention to what the officer is saying. If there's a written, if they write anything down, pay attention, and just know when you do meet with your lawyer to give them that information. All right. Now, if you are driving and you're pulled over by the police, your rights are a little different, right? The driver and the drivers and passengers have right to remain silent. So again, use it. I know a lot of people want to explain themselves. Please use your right to remain silent. If you are a passenger, you can ask if you're free to leave. If yes, you may leave silently. Okay? Keep your right to remain silent and just leave. How to reduce the risk to yourself. Because sometimes you are being detained, you're stopped in a car, and you're afraid, right? That shouldn't be the case, but we all know that is what happens. So if you are stopped in a car, go ahead, turn off your car, turn on, turn on the internal light so the officer comes back. Again, this should not be the case, but you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself and your passengers. If you do have a license, present your license. Again, if you're in Florida, just know if it's an out-of-state license and you're undocumented, it will not count as a license in Florida, and the officer can then arrest you for driving without a license, even though you have a license. So just keep that in mind. If you are detained, the same rules apply. If you're arrested, the same rules apply. You have a right to counsel. You have a right to remain silent. Okay, you can make a phone call. So do not let the fear of being stopped by the police. Please remember, if nothing else, right? If you remember nothing else, remember that you have a right to remain silent. Remember that you have a right to remain silent. And if you are being detained or arrested, you have a right to an attorney, even a government appointed attorney, if you cannot afford to get your own private attorney. Okay? And it does not matter if you're undocumented or if you're a US citizen, you have that right. If the police is at your door, again, I'm just covering my bases because, as you know, especially in Florida, you really want to be careful and you want to know your rights. You do not have to invite the officers into your house, right? You can talk to the officer through the door. You don't even have to open the door, okay? You can talk to them through the door, ask them to identify themselves. If they say they want to come in, ask them for the warrant, right? They have to show you the warrant. If they have it, if they don't have a search warrant or an arrest warrant, they do not have a right to come into your home without your express permission. Okay? If they say that they do have a warrant, ask them to slip it under your door. You don't have to open the door for them to give it to you and review and make sure they have the right place. Right? And remember, if you do have an attorney that you can call, this is the best time to give them a call. Okay? As always, you do have the right to remain silent if I didn't say that enough. All right. So if you have been arrested, please have the right to remain silent, have the right to a phone call, have the right to an attorney. Okay. So I hope this has been helpful, breaking this down and just giving you a basic overview of what your rights are when you are in a situation where you have a police interaction. All right. Florida, like I said, is making it very difficult for um, undocumented individuals to live in their state. That's bottom line. The the US government as a whole is making it very difficult for people to be able to apply for asylum in the US. They are creating new things, new barriers, right? If you are traveling through multiple countries, if you do not have a phone, if you have no way of getting information about this new rule, how, may I ask, how are you supposed to know about it, to know to get a CBP1 app, which requires you to have a phone, by the way? Okay, it's an app. It's not something, it's not like an application someone can print out for you and you fill it out and then you send it in and ask for an appointment. No, it's an app on your phone that you need to have, which requires you to have, oh yeah, internet, right, on your phone in order to do all of this while you are basically fleeing for your life to come to the US and ask for asylum. As always, as always, I'm here to give you information. It doesn't mean that I like the information that I'm giving you, but again, the goal is to make sure that you are informed, that you know what is going on. This is a very long long video, but I wanted it to be detailed, and I wanted to make sure that you know what your rights are, how you can overcome the ban, the asylum transit ban, and what's going on in Florida, so that I know a lot of immigrants live in Florida or have family in Florida. So just, you know, send them this video and let them know they should be careful if they are undocumented. All right. So, on that joyous note, I guess that is the end of this video today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have questions, as always, please put them in the comments. I know that's a lot to take in. And it's a lot to think about how the government is actively making it difficult for someone fleeing for their lives to get asylum, or for someone to basically live in a state that they've lived in for a long time. So I know it's difficult, but you need to know this. So that's why this video is here, right? That's why I'm doing this stream, to make sure that you have the information and that you are informed. Feel free to share this video with people. If you found this helpful, go ahead and like. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to know what's going on in US immigration, how it can affect you, how it can affect family members going through the immigration system, go ahead and subscribe to this page. And if you would like to schedule a private consultation with me where we talk about your specific immigration needs, you can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, or by calling my office at 508-443-1788. Thank you so much for joining me. Once again, I am Lilian Chukura. I'm a U.S. immigration attorney, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. Thank you and have a great